So when I started this channel, I was hoping to be a little more regular with my video postings, but it's challenging to put together this content and edit it and have a life and work and all that stuff. But the good news is I have been shooting video on various projects, and what I'm hoping to do over the coming few weeks here over the holidays is to spend a little more time on these videos, and so hopefully that I can start to put these out a little more regularly. And I've got a few projects here listed, and in all these cases I have shot at least some video, and in some cases I've shot quite a bit of video as I've been working on these various projects. A lot of these projects are basically new to me, so I start working on them, I get so far into them, and then I realize, well, I maybe need to rethink things, and that means that it's hard to just do these all the way through in one shot. So for transmitting antennas, now that I have a ham radio license, well, the one I'm most excited about right now is the magnetic loop antenna for transmitting. And in fact, if you've looked at my blog, I have been successful at this. I built a transmitting loop that worked on the 40 and 20 meter bands, and I've successfully made some low power QSOs all the way to the East Coast with that. Now that was with a variable capacitor, but an air variable capacitor. So in the meantime, I've bought this beauty. This is a vintage, removed from working equipment vacuum variable capacitor. There's a vacuum inside of here. There's a glass bulb here, sealed. And they make ceramic vacuum variables, but the glass ones are just they're just sexier. I mean, you can actually see what's going on when you turn the shaft of the that pushes this in and out. And so I'm working on replacing my air variable capacitor with this vacuum variable capacitor, which among other things will let me transmit a little higher power, and also because this has a considerably higher capacitance range, I can cover a little more frequency range in my transmissions. Now, I've also started last summer working on a 6-meter Yagi, and this was primarily to work sporadic E during the summer, and then right now we're kind of getting into the winter sporadic E season up in the 50 megahertz range. I've designed a Yagi antenna with a good front to back ratio and a relatively small beam size with 4 elements. And so I kind of stalled on that project, but I want to get back to that and put that together and finally test it now that I have a little more sense of how well my transmitting equipment works. As far as receiving antennas, well, I already did several videos on the Conti Superloop. Now, one of the things I've been working on is building a small version of the Superloop. Some people have called these small versions micro Superloops. And the idea here is that I want to have a test rig for really testing the capabilities of Superloop antennas, testing how well things like the terminating resistance, how well that correlates with doing modeling with the NEC code, and testing how good the pattern actually is. And so I need a rig that I can actually mount the whole thing and be able to rotate it relatively easily, so I can do measurements at various angles. I need it to be portable enough so that I can go somewhere where there's minimal power lines and such. I've got a lot of national forest land around here, so there are areas where I can go that are pretty remote and won't be bothered by electrical interference and such. And also something that's repeatable. So something that has a fixed mount for it, as opposed to taking down and putting up and taking down something where you might not be exactly the same every time. Other things, for my AM broadcast band DXing, I've done some work with making passive RF filters. These are filters using, they're LC filters basically, using, you can either call them LC because they're lumped component, or LC because they use inductors and capacitors. And so I've built some fairly precise filters to filter out a couple of very strong local AM stations that I have close together. And so I've shot a lot of video on that, and I just need to kind of clean things up and kind of do some conclusions. Audio processing for FM broadcast band, sporadic E. That's mostly a summertime thing. But you do these large SDR recordings where there's a huge amount of data that you collect, and then what do you do with all that? It's not practical to listen to every single minute of your audio, to listen for periods where you might be getting a distant station from reflection off the ionosphere. So in this, I'll talk some about how you can do that in a way that saves you time and is very efficient by using audio processing software, in particular the Audacity software, which is a multi-platform software package. And also vector network analysis, in particular the Mini VNA Pro, which I will put right here. There's a Mini VNA, the Mini VNA Pro. These are what they do is they connect to a computer, and you can take broadband data on how well an antenna, how efficient an antenna is, its standing wave ratio, the same way you would use a standing wave ratio antenna meter. Also, it can measure filters. So when I'm doing these AM broadcast band filters, this is how I can measure to see if it's working correctly before I use it for real. And for the antenna testing, it's not just testing receiving antennas, but also transmitting antennas. And in fact, this is what I was using to make sure I had my magnetic loop antenna tuned properly for where I wanted to work when I was first getting on the air with that antenna. So there's a lot of different aspects of this. There are some videos out there. I mean, there's videos out there on almost all this stuff. So I'm just hoping that I can maybe add a little bit and hopefully try to explain things well and give you some ideas. Even if you don't do things exactly the way I'm doing them, at least give you some ideas on what you can do and experiment from there. So I'm hoping to get some of these done before the end of the year and get a couple of videos posted before the end of the year. And if I can get some more of these done, then I can kind of start maybe being more regular about my posting of videos. I also want to occasionally post shorter videos. This one is getting a little bit long, actually. I'm getting up to about 8 minutes here. But some shorter videos that aren't about very large projects. I can do more shorter videos than longer videos, but one of the things I've wanted to do is to put some longer videos on here to really explain things and not just be and to have a lot of content and not just be filled with superficial fluff, kind of like this video is. So in any case, I don't have a big audience built up yet, but for those who have viewed my videos, thanks, and I have a few subscribers, and thanks to you. And so hopefully I can get this going more regularly and have a lot more content over the coming months.